Good morning. Good morning. It's a delight, it's a joy to see you here and worship with us this morning. I was only away one Sunday, but it feels like a lot happened in that time there. I hope you had a wonderful Thanksgiving with one another, or however you observed the holiday time. I understand that the turkey dinner last week was great, and I'm grateful to everyone who helped to participate in that. And thanks to Carol, who was not here for helping with the worship leadership last week. So for everyone who stepped in for that. I wonder if there's any announcements this morning for the good of our community. I know there's probably several. We'll start here.
Okay, I'm gonna come up here.
All right.
So, as some of you may or may not know, we had a Christmas bazaar here 2 weeks ago.
Yes, we
We
did.
rocked $400 over last year. So everybody who participated, either large or small, thank you from the bottom of the Christmas committee's big heart.
Yeah.
So, if Cherry will join me up here, we had two beneficiaries this year, Willowbrook Food Pantry, which we've been supporting for years. And it gives me great pleasure to present this check for $1,000 to Willowbrook. Our other beneficiary was Hope's Haven, a faith-based dog rescue it's actually out of Lincoln, but it's a Salem address because none of those towns down there are big enough to have their own post office. Okay, so I'm gonna send the other $1,000 check to her. And as we all know, Eric has been told to take one Sunday a month off. So I extended an invitation for Marcia, who runs Hope's Haven, to come and speak to us sometime next spring. And I'm really happy to say she's accepted. And so she'll come some Sunday next spring, and she will be telling us all about Hope's Haven and the faith-based dog rescue, because there's lots of dogs that need rescuing, just like there's lots of under-rescued people. A couple of weeks ago, I said something about Christmas in July. Well, we kind of had a semi-official and semi-unofficial meeting. And what we're going to do next October, mid-October to maybe the third week, is we're going to have a combination Harvest Fest and Holiday Bazaar. So we will have food. We thought about doing potluck and decided that would just be too much over the top. So we'll have brats and buns, chips, coleslaw, and drinks. And for your dessert, you can come in and buy a cookie from the bazaar. So people get your creative juices flowing. Let's all think, and let's get over $3,000 this time. We were a little over $2,900 this year, and let's aim higher. I think we can do it. Okay, thank you.
I just want to tell you that the Willowbrook was so appreciated so much. Last Saturday, just for one day, we served 32 families, and that means 177 people in one day. That's a lot. That's awesome. And he hit we usually serve 20 to 22 families every Saturday. But that's 10 more families than 177 people. So this is appreciated so much.
Good. Thank you.
And thank you to everyone who was involved in the bazaar, in preparing the crafts and getting everything together. But I think we should give a special thanks to Carol for all of her leadership for this song. Tom, I saw you had a hand up for announcements.
Yeah, I would appreciate any content for the December newsletter to be to me by Wednesday. So I can get it out before the end of the month.
All right, December newsletter content, it's the time. Any other announcements this morning? Do we have a time for doing the decorations for Advent and stuff? Has that been?
Next week.
Next week. Okay. All right.
I just want.
Oh, you have another? Yeah,
Yes,
sure.
I did remember this one. Our charge conference is this Tuesday. So one of the things that has to be our charge is having the district superintendent confirmed Mountain Home nominations for 2024. So thanks everybody that you've joyously stayed in the position that you've taken for the church. And Carol McComas, again, is heading up SPCR.
Well, not again, I'm taking over from Alice.
Well, you're heading up. And we thank you.
Thank you.
And I'll pass it around one more time, and I'll pass it around, and you can carefully consider one more time.
So Tuesday evening is our charge conference. It will be available on Zoom. There'll be an email come out with a reminder of the link. hopefully tomorrow. And then also, you can come if you would like to come in person to Sherwood. We'll have it set up on screens in the sanctuary there. So if anyone would feel more comfortable in person, that's an option for that as well. Everyone is welcome to attend. Church council members are respectfully obliged to please attend. Wendy will be running that for us. Our district superintendent will be running that for us, so it's an opportunity for us to see and interact with her. Yes?
Is she going to be at Sherwood?
She is going to be on Zoom. Yeah, she was hoping to be able to come to Sherwood, but she let me know this week that she, like many of us, got a cold and doesn't want to risk being in person with people. So she will be on. She'll be on Zoom. Yeah. Any other announcements this morning? All right. Seeing none, I invite you to take a deep breath as we prepare our hearts and minds to join together in the worship of the living Lord.
Good morning. Will you join me with the call to worship in your bulletin? Creator's blessing rests on the poor, the ones with broken spirits.
The good road from above is theirs to walk.
Creator's blessing rests on the ones who walk a trail of tears.
For he will wipe the tears from their eyes and comfort them.
Creator's blessing rests on the ones who walk softly and in a humble manner.
The earth, land, and sky will welcome them and always be their home.
Creator's blessing rests on the ones who hunger and thirst for wrongs to be made right again.
They will eat and drink until they are full.
Creator's blessing rests on the ones who are merciful and kind to others.
Their kindness will find its way back to them, full circle.
Creator's blessing rests on the pure of heart.
They are the ones who will see the Great Spirit.
Creator's blessings rest on the ones who make peace.
They will be said they are the children of the Great Spirit.
Creator's blessing rests on the ones who are hunted down and mistreated for doing what is right.
For they are walking the good road from above.
So we're now going to sing hymn 569 in your big hymnal. And if you'd like to stand in body or spirit, please join me in the hymn.
Peace and light, for the darkness One, you are hungry, you are thirsty, you are homeless, you are in prison, because we still live in a world that allows our neighbors to starve, sleep outside, and languish in captivity. Help us not just to seek you among the hungry, not just to find you among the poor, but to be restless until we have ended hunger and poverty. Ignite our hearts with the fire of your passion for justice, that we may labor until liberation is a reality for all your children. The amazing news of the gospel is that we, having been baptized into a life, death, and resurrection like Christ's, have therefore been united with him in his ministry. The peace that he has made with heaven and with earth is for us to enjoy and to share. The peace of Jesus Christ be with you. Let's share that peace with our neighbors. Join me in response to the peace. Let us sing a new song to the Lord.
Let all creation praise the Lord. And now we come to our UK time in the service. So do we have a request for a hymn? No requests so far? Oh, here we go, one. Wendy?
I'll always come up with something. We're not wasting singing time. The large hymnal, 227, which is yours. Friend of the Beast, let's do 1 and 6.
Okay, that's hymn 227, verses 1 and 6.
In the same hymnal, 206, verses 1 and 3.
206, verses 1 and 3. small hymnal 2158, verses 1 and 3.
I am weak, but thou art strong. Jesus, keep me from all wrong. I'll be satisfied as long as I walk. Let me walk close to thee. Just a closer walk with thee. Granted, Jesus is my plea. Daily walking close to thee. Let it be, dear Lord, let it be. When my feeble life is gone, time for me will be no more. Guide me gently, safely home to thy shore, dear Lord, to thy shore. Just a closer walk with thee. Granted, Jesus is my plea. Daily walking close to thee. Let it be, dear Lord, let it be.
Wasn't that nice to sing our hymns? I love that part. So if you please turn to page 821 in the large hymnal, we're going to share together in Psalm 100. We're going to be using the first response. So we'll just have Danny play it once, and then we will begin by singing it together and starting the song.
Rejoice, 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 give thanks and sing.
Make a joyful noise to the Lord, all the lands.
Serve the Lord with gladness. Come into God's presence with singing.
Know that the Lord who made us is God.
We are the Lord's. We are the people of God, the sheep of God's pasture.
Enter God's gates with thanksgiving and God's courts with praise.
Give thanks and bless God's name.
For the Lord is good.
God's steadfast love endures forever. God's faithfulness to all generations. Rejoice, 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 give thanks and sing.
And now Danny will grace us with some special music at the end.
this fall, we have had our practice of sharing a poem in worship from a Native American poet. This is the last Sunday in the church liturgical year. So next Sunday we begin a new year with Advent, and that means that also today is the end of this year where I set aside for listening to Indigenous voices in particular in worship. So I thought it was appropriate that we would end the year with a poem by Joy Harjo, who is the first Native American poet to hold the position of Poet Laureate of the United States. She's a Muskogee woman, and this is her poem, A Map to the Next World. In the last days of the fourth world, I wished to make a map for those who would climb through the hole in the sky. My only tools were the desires of humans as they emerged from the killing fields, from the bedrooms and the kitchens. For the soul is a wanderer with many hands and feet. The map must be of sand and can't be read by ordinary light. It must carry fire to the next tribal town for renewal of spirit. In the legend are instructions on the language of the land, how it was we forgot to acknowledge the gift as if we were not in it or of it. Take note of the proliferation of supermarkets and malls, the altars of money. They best describe the detour from grace. Keep track of the errors of our forgetfulness. The fog steals our children while we sleep. Flowers of rage spring up in the depression. Monsters are born there of nuclear anger. Trees of ashes wave goodbye to goodbye, and the map appears to disappear. We no longer know the names of the birds here, how to speak to them by their personal names. Once we knew everything in this lush promise. What I am telling you is real and is printed in a warning on the map. Our forgetfulness stalks us, walks the earth behind us, leaving a trail of paper diapers, needles, and wasted blood. An imperfect map will have to do, little one. The place of entry is the sea of your mother's blood, your father's small death as he longs to know himself in another. There is no exit. The map can be interpreted through the wall of the intestine, a spiral on the road of knowledge. You will travel through the membrane of death, smell cooking from the encampment where our relatives make a feast of fresh deer meat and corn soup in the Milky Way. They have never left us. We abandoned them for science. And when you take your next breath as we enter the fifth world, there will be no X, no guidebook with words you can carry. You will have to navigate by your mother's voice, renew the song she is singing. Fresh courage glimmers from planets and lights the map printed with the blood of history, a map you will have to know by your intention, by the language of suns. When you emerge, note the tracks of the monster slayers, where they entered the cities of artificial light and killed what was killing us. You will see red cliffs. They are the heart, contain the ladder. A white deer will greet you when the last human climbs from the destruction. Remember the hole of shame marking the act of abandoning our tribal grounds. We were never perfect. Yet the journey we make together is perfect on this earth. It was once a star and made the same mistakes as humans. We might make them again, she said. Crucial to finding the way is this: there is no beginning or end. You must make your own map. And our scripture reading today comes from the Gospel according to Matthew, in the 25th chapter of that text, starting in the 31st verse. Listen now for the word of the Lord. When the true human being comes in all of his power and shining greatness, along with all of his spirit messengers, he will sit down in his seat of honor. All nations will be gathered and come before him. He will choose between them like a shepherd separates the sheep from the goats. He will put the sheep on his right side and the goats to his left. Then the chief will say to the sheep on his right, "The blessing of my Father rests upon you. Come into the land of Creator's good road that has been prepared for you from the beginning of the world. For I was thirsty, and you gave me drink. I was hungry, and you fed me. I was a stranger, and you gave me lodging. When I needed clothes, you gave me something to wear. When I was sick, you took care of me. And when I was in prison, you visited me." "When did we do all these things for you?" the good-hearted ones asked. "I speak from my heart," he answered them. "Whatever you did for the least important of my fellow human beings who needed help, you did for me." Then the chief will say to the goats on his left, "Go away from me, you who have bad hearts, into the fire that burns everything up, made for the evil trickster, snake and his messengers. For when I was hungry, you gave me nothing to eat. When I was thirsty, you gave me no drink. And when I was a stranger, you turned me away. When I needed clothes, you gave me nothing to wear. And when I was sick and in prison, you failed to visit me." honored when they questioned, "When was it that we saw you like this and did nothing?" "I speak from my heart," he answered back. "When you did not help the ones who needed it most, you failed to help me." Then the goats will go away to the punishment of the world to come that never fades, and the sheep will enter the life of the world to come that never fades away, full of beauty and harmony. This is the word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
This passage from Matthew 25 is rather central to the theology I generally preach and teach. Should be pretty familiar territory for us in this congregation, and I think it's become central, core to the life of our thinking and our faith here in Mount Holmes Church as well. We understand that when we go to assist our neighbor, when we go to care for those who are hungry, those who are outcast, those who are poor and impoverished, we are doing so because we believe that Jesus is to be found among them, that Jesus is embodied in those in our world who are oppressed, and that actions of justice, actions to try to make our world a better, more just, more loving place, are part and parcel, maybe even the very core of what it means to be Christian, to be a Christian community. But today I want to talk to you about an aspect of this passage that I think often gets overlooked, one I haven't really discussed in detail before, which is that this passage is not actually directed toward individuals, even though we may have sometimes interpreted it or used it as such. Jesus isn't actually saying in this passage that you, Diane, are either a sheep or a goat, or you, Alice, or a sheep or a goat, or you, Cherry, are a sheep or a goat. Jesus isn't using the second person singular, you here. He's using the second person plural, referring to groups of people, and the group that is referred to in this pronoun here is identified at the beginning of the passage with the Greek word ethne, meaning nations. Jesus here is talking to whole nations of people and asking whether or not these nations have been just as far as their concern for the poor and the imprisoned and the hungry. And this is why it's always tricky for pastors like me whenever we get accused of, being political from the pulpit, because Jesus' very words are political. Jesus is saying in this passage, nations do better. Nations do better. How can I preach this passage without saying, hey, America, do better? It's part of the very message of the gospel that the nations are called and expected to do better by the people who they have care over, by the poor, by the oppressed, by the outcast. It's part of the obligation of Christians to try to make our nations, to make our communities better places. There's also an element to this passage which I think is interesting and directly connects it to our thinking about our own nation's relationship to indigenous peoples, which, since that's been the theme of the year, I thought it would be appropriate to end the year with this subject and this theme. Because the Bible takes as one of its primary inspirations at various points in both the Old and New Testament, treaty language of the ancient Near Eastern kingdoms. When two ancient Near Eastern kingdoms were at war or in conflict, they would often be concluded, resolved with a treaty, similar to the way wars often end in our time. The treaties would be written on stone, on stelae, big, tall, standing stones carved into the stone. And the treaties would be framed in this way. If these nations abide by the terms of this treaty, then they will receive, and there would be a litany of blessings. And if the nations fail to abide by the terms of this treaty, then they will receive, and there would be a litany of curses. And the blessings and curses would be written out in a list, and it would sound something like this. The nations that follow this treaty will be blessed by bountiful harvests, a land flowing with milk and honey, children of many generations praising their names and growing and flourishing, and so on and so forth. And if the nations fail to follow these treaties, they will be cursed with droughts and floods and famines and pestilences and injustices and cruelties, and their children will wail and moan, and it will be full of suffering. The idea of these treaties and the belief of the ancient Near Eastern people was that these treaties were divinely mandated activated and divinely enforced. In other words, by invoking the gods in signing the treaty, by invoking whatever gods those nations believed in signing the treaty, they believed that the treaties had a supernatural power to ensure that they were followed, because God would make sure that those blessings and curses came to pass if you didn't or did abide by the terms of the treaty. It was a way to sort of guarantee that the other side did what they were supposed to do by ensuring that there was a price to be paid if they failed to do what they were supposed to do. And those blessings and curses, those litanies of blessings and curses, became the format, the structure of the Torah law in the Old Testament. Deuteronomy and Exodus both begin their explanations of the law with a litany of blessings and curses. The litany of blessings and curses, which should sound familiar, that the people will be led into a land, a promised land that will be theirs, that it will flow with milk and honey, that there will be bountiful harvests, that their generations, that they will grow as numerous as the stars, their descendants will praise them and love them for generations to come. And the curses, if they fail to follow this covenant, to follow this law, then they will, the food will grow short, there will be famine on the land, the plants will wither and the animals will die and the people will suffer. Those blessings and curses became part of the structure of our religious understanding of our Old Testament, and are carried forward in the New Testament when Jesus invokes the same basic structure for his Sermon on the Mount. The Sermon on the Mount begins with a litany of blessings, the Beatitudes, which we've been using for the last few weeks as our call to worship. Blessed are the poor, blessed are the hungry, blessed are the merciful, for these things will accrue to them, right? These are the things that are there. And if we read the Lucan version, Matthew's version only has the Beatitudes, only has the blessings, but the Lucan version contains the parallel of the curses. Cursed are the oppressors, cursed are the powerful who neglect people, cursed are the ones who fail to do these things. Luke has the full format of the ancient Near Eastern treaty style. In other words, this treaty language underlies the way that our Bible thinks about how people groups are supposed to relate to each other, and the idea of how God will interface with these ideas. And it underlies, therefore, this Matthean passage, this parable of the nations, the parable of the sheep and the goats, where Jesus is basically saying, here are the obligations that God really has for you. Feed the hungry, visit the sick and imprisoned, clothe the naked, welcome the strangers. These are the obligations that you have as followers of God. And if you fail to follow them, then you receive the punishment of the goats. And if you succeed in following them, then you receive the blessing of the sheep. So it has the same structure, this treaty structure into it. And I find it interesting that these ancient Near Eastern treaties are still there in our text and still there in our thinking and in our theology, because it's directly informative of our own nation's history of relationship with indigenous people. It's probably something that you're already aware of. It's sort of lurking there in our history. We know it's the case even if we don't think about it very much. But in the process of settling this country, in the process of coming across, the West, the frontier, and, coming here, the United States made a lot of treaties with the peoples of this land. We signed hundreds of them. Many of them were ratified by Congress. By our own nation's laws, treaty law supersedes state and federal law. It is a higher form of law, meaning it can't be overturned by other laws after the fact unless Congress themselves decertify the treaty. Treaties don't cease to be the law of the land even after time has passed, meaning that those treaties which we signed and those treaties which we agreed to remain, by every legal scholar's understanding, the actual law of the land. Nevertheless, we have, in almost every case, failed to uphold the terms of these treaties, or outright, betrayed the terms of the treaties in a variety of ways, and continue to do so. Because it isn't just a matter past, but is ongoing reality. But because the treaties are still the law of the land, because they are still the obligation of our government to the native peoples that are there, every day and week and month and year that passes where we fail to honor the treaties continues to be a violation of those terms and agreements. To give you just one example of such a treaty, in 1851, the Treaty of Laramie was signed between the United States government and the various people groups of the Central Plains area of Wyoming and Montana and the Dakotas, the Cheyenne and the Nakota, Dakota, Lakota, Sioux peoples of that region. The Treaty of Laramie basically gave in perpetuity all of the land from central and northern Wyoming up to the Canadian border and over towards the Badlands of Dakota and such to native people for their purposes and use, and guaranteed that white settlers would not move into that land. It was immediately violated by white settlers in the immediate aftermath of the case. And when white settlers moved into those territories, the U.S. cavalry followed and defended the interests of the white settlers against the Native American people, ultimately enforcing the removal of Native people from the land to reservations and to present-day territories. But the treaty itself never went away, and it remains legally the basis of the relationship between the U.S. government and the peoples of that region, remains legally the understanding of how that land is supposed to be treated, which means that every single person who owns land and is living on land in that place there is, at the present moment, technically illegally living there. Which is, of course, something that creates a great deal of anxiety and fear and sentiment to be thought about, which is why we don't think about it. To think about it creates a great sense of, well, what do we do after these decades and generations have passed about this reality that remains still the case? And this violation of the treaty is something that isn't, again, distant past. For example, it was the Treaty of Laramie that was invoked by the Standing Rock Sioux in 2016 when they said that they objected to this pipeline going through this territory because a portion of the pipeline was technically outside the borders of their current reservation, but within their treaty lands and rights that they were there, and they were relying on the treaty rights to say, we have the right to say there shouldn't be a pipeline here. And the U.S. used military power to enforce the property rights of a private company over the treaty rights of the native people to that place. It's happened again recently in Arizona. Arizona, there is a section of land which by treaty belongs to the Apache people. That land was, through a defense appropriations bill, deeded to an Australian mineral mining company to mine minerals from land that belongs to the Apache people by treaty. The U.S. government, or the Congress, gave mining rights to an Australian company to go in and mine this territory in Arizona that by treaty still belongs to the Apache people. Not all treaties deal specifically with just borders and lands, land rights. For example, here in the Pacific Northwest, many of the treaties didn't specify, for example, that settlers weren't welcome here. For many reasons, the native people of this region welcomed settlers moving to this place, but they asked for certain things like hunting and fishing rights to be reserved to certain tribal groups at certain times of year. Those treaty rights are continually in discussion and dispute in our local region and in argument in our courts over it. You may not realize that within the last 5 years, almost a dozen native boats and homes have been burnt by settlers, by white fishermen who are angry about native people having certain fishing rights and hunting rights that they don't have, and they see it as a special privilege that native people are given. And so native people receive vigilante acts of violence against them for exercising their treaty rights to fish or hunt in territory that they have. Now, Normally, when it comes to morality, I am not a deontologist, is the fancy ethical term for it. Which is to say, I do not think that morality is best done through rules and laws. Morality usually is something that's best discerned through lots of complicated, subtle nuance and thinking about all the different factors in the situation. But when it comes to treaties, I think that treaties often function as sort of the floor, the bare minimum of what we're obligated to do for each other. I think that it is the case that the United States, until we actually are honoring the treaties, have no room for discussion about how we ought to be or live with Native American communities. There's a lot more we can say and do about how we may want to live in harmony with Native American communities. Much, much more. But the starting place is honoring the treaties. The beginning of a right relationship in this nation with the people who preceded settlers in this place is respecting the obligations that we agreed to, respecting the promises we made, and which still are technically the law of the land. And that is actually doable, and that's wonderful news. That you may think that this is just sort of an impossible thing because it sounds like a big complication, but when we talk to the leadership, the tribal leadership of the different groups who are party to these treaties, their understanding of these treaties does not mean, for example, that everyone who moved here since 1492 has to go home. The Standing Rock Sioux believe that the Treaty of Laramie doesn't mean that settlers have to leave all of the territory of the Treaty of Laramie. It just means that the administration of that land and the decision over how that land is used properly and rightly belongs to the tribal people. It's a shift from living as conquerors of a place to living as guests in a place, which is a shift that I think we can actually make. We can actually change our understanding of our relationship to this place and our understanding of our relationship to each other from being one of conquistadors dominating and controlling to being instead guests who've arrived and asked for hospitality. And shockingly, wonderfully, have again and again received it. The hospitality of the indigenous people of this continent is remarkable and continues to be amazing. It isn't a question of whether or not we are going to live together in this land. It's a question of how we're going to live together in this land. And whether we're going to live together in this land in a way that honors the truth of the nature of that relationship and strives to do so in a way that is just and caring. Many of these treaties were not written in the way of ancient Near Eastern treaties, and we didn't believe that they were enforced by some divine mandates behind them that would promise us blessings if we followed them and curses if we didn't follow them. Nevertheless, I think that the wisdom of the ancient Near Eastern people, that honoring the treaties is a path toward wholeness for your whole nation and community, is wisdom that is relevant to us today. In many ways, and not just with our relationship with Indigenous people. If our nation can honor our obligations when it comes to our climate commitments on the broader stage, if our nation can honor our obligations when it comes to our commitments toward aid toward nations that have less than we have in wealth terms, if our nation can honor our commitments in terms of our objectives of achieving peace with other countries around the world, most of the commitments that we make as a nation toward each other represent our highest ideals and desire for who we would want to be on the international stage. And living up to those commitments can only make us a better nation and a better community of human beings. That can only be a path toward blessing, not just for us, but for all of our neighbors. And so may we, here in this ancient Near Eastern treaty language, an opportunity to become the best version of ourselves as a country. May we hear the possibility of wholeness, of being invited into a community of nations that seeks to live together in such a way that God's love and God's justice and God's peace are made manifest. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, all glory and honor be unto them. Amen. And now I'm going to invite you to join me in standing and singing together from our hymnal number 431, Let There Be Peace on Earth. We love because God loved us first. We give because God has given us everything. And so I invite you to give to our community. You can leave an offering on your way out. You can mail one in. You can also give of your time and your energy in so many countless ways to help us in our ministry to the broader world and community around us. And everything that you give of yourself, of your time, and your resources is a blessing for which we thank you. And so I invite you to join me in the response to the offering found printed in the bulletin. Surrounded by a great cloud of witnesses, I'd like to end with one last anecdote from my Native American friend Jolene, who was here a couple weeks ago. She was talking about a time that she was gathered with a group and someone asked her opinion about land acknowledgements. Land acknowledgements are a practice that's become common in a lot of organizations and groups where you begin a meeting with a statement of something along the lines of, we acknowledge that we're on the land traditionally of the Tualatin and Kalapuya people who have shepherded and cared for this land since time immemorial and are here today, and we express our gratitude to them. Something along those lines. Different groups do different versions of the thing. It's designed to raise people's awareness and to express some sensitivity and gratitude around the history of settler colonialism in a place. But they asked her what was her opinion of land acknowledgements, and she smiled and saw that they had a water bottle. And she went and she took their water bottle and she held it up and she said, "I acknowledge that this is your water bottle." And then she proceeded to drink it and keep it. And she said, you know, land acknowledgements are fine. They're lovely. They're nice when people say it. But when it is accompanied by no effort whatsoever to actually rectify the situation, if you have no intent of actually returning the thing you stole, acknowledging that you stole it doesn't do very much good. In other words, words alone, of course, won't get us there. We've spent this last year thinking about and talking about Native American history, Native American culture, Native American religion, beliefs, and theories, and how they connect to our own. And I hope we've found some ways that you see how it is related to Christian faith and Christian story and gain some value of it. But words are not going to get us there. All the words of the past year don't mean very much unless we are also a community of action. So let us go forth and be a community of flesh and blood. Let us go forth and be a community trying to right wrongs, trying to live in a better way, trying to build relationship and community and culture with our Native American brothers and sisters who share this place with us, and figuring out how we may do better than generations before us have done, and live in a way that our generations who come after us can be grateful for the path that we have walked. And may the grace of our Lord Jesus Christ, the love of God the Father, and the sweet, sweet communion of the Holy Spirit rest, rule, and abide in your hearts this day and every day. To conclude our service, we're going to sing When the Saints Go Marching In. I invite you to stand and bow your spirit while we sing.